Hey guys, and welcome to Petrol Pet. Now, if you've been following my channel since it started, you will know I drive a fast Audi estate, an S4. In fact, I love them so much. That's my second one. And I often get asked the question, have you ever been tempted into a BMW? Well, to be honest, up until now, BMW haven't made an equivalent to that, a fast 3 Series Touring. But that has all changed. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the BMW 340i XDrive Touring. Handsome thing, don't you think? Well, thanks to BMW UK, I've been driving that for the last week and I reckon I've got a pretty good feel for it now. So in this video, I'm going to put that up against my S4 and just see if finally there's a BMW to tempt me out of my Audi. So I must say I am properly battling against the elements today. The weather is awful, high winds and rain, lots of rain on the camera lens. Apologies for that, but let's get down to the meat of the video. These two cars, and for me, the S4 is one of the best cars Audi makes. In terms of price and performance, it's a fantastic compromise. So what have we got here? Well, I'm using my B9 S4. I know there's a newer S4 which is probably more comparable to that in many respects, but the new S4 is a diesel. This is a petrol. So underneath here we have a 3-litre V6 turbocharged petrol engine, 354 horsepower, 500 Newton meters. Under here we have the infamous BMW straight 6 3-litre turbocharged engine with a mild hybrid system, which we will talk about a bit later. But this is producing 369 horsepower and 500 Newton meters. Little bit more grunt in horsepower, same torque. Performance wise, 0 to 60, 4.9 seconds, 4.5 seconds. Quattro 4-wheel drive, XDrive. See, they're very, very similar. Front profile wise, now, I actually really like the front end of this car. I know in recent times BMW have had a huge amount of grief for the kidney grille design and the fact they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. For me though, actually, the front of that M340 looks really nice. This car's got the laser lights, which are very, very good. And I think all in all, the front profile of this car is really very good. I like it. I am, however, a big fan of mine. But one of the things I've noticed with having these two cars parked in my garage is in terms of size, footprint wise, they're both very, very similar, but for some reason my car just looks that little bit smaller, that little bit more nimble, that little bit maybe less garish and in your face, a little bit more subtle. So it's a very close call from the front end of both cars. For me, mine edges it just a little bit, but I am a fan. Let's go to the back because these are both estate cars, so the back is where it's at. Yes, for me, the back of these cars, well, they're actually very similar traits to both cars we have here. They both are fitted with privacy glass. I am a big fan of privacy glass and I just think it sets the styling off really nicely. They both have a very similar size, quite subtle rear spoiler. They both got the kind of shark fin antenna. I like that a lot. Let's just have a chat about the BMW first of all. I love the styling of the rear light cluster on the new 3 Series. I think it just has something very special about it. And all in all, a pretty good job. However, we do have some fake exhausts down here. That's just basically a plastic housing. The main exhaust sits inside. Although, as fake exhausts go, they are actually quite nice. I quite like the styling of that. It does set the car off really nicely. So if you're gonna kind of put fake trim, that's how you do it. Rear of my car, I've always liked the lights and the rear look of my car, but unusual for a modern Audi, we have a real exhaust here, look. I know it needs a bit of a clean. I'll clean it once the winter's through. It's disgusting at the moment. Really nice. In fact, I think for both of these cars, the rear view is probably nicer than the front. But the reason why I have a fast estate is because of practicality. So when you want to be really practical and you've got a bike, or for us, you've got the dogs, huge amounts of space. Cavernous amounts of space in both cars. However, the thing I do like about the 340 is you've got some under the boot storage, just a little bit more. It's not a great deal more, about that much, to put stuff, so that's useful. But under the boot of mine, I have a spare space saver wheel, which is very, very useful. So under the boot storage, space saver wheel. And having had a couple of punctures in my S4 in the time I've had it, I really like having that practicality of having a space saver wheel rather than having to put a gunk can in your tyre, or worst case using run flat tyres. So yes, very nice styling, like the rear, very practical. I tell you I can put a bike in the back, I certainly can get the dogs in the back, but today's weather is so foul. Let's jump inside and we'll talk about the rest of the car, because there's lots to talk about, lots. Oh, it's so horrible out there. Now, as an Audi owner, one of the things I love about Audi are the interiors. I think ever since my first Audi, which was a Mark 1 TT Roadster, and what an exceptional cabin that had, they've always been beautifully appointed, very well ergonomically designed, superb technology, and my S4 is no exception. However, this interior of the new 3 Series, for me, is right up. I think it's one of the best interiors going at the moment. Should we just mention these seats first of all? They are very comfy, but the spec of this car with this blue leather isn't going to be to everybody's tastes. When I first put some pictures of this on Instagram, I had people going, oh my God, what are those seats? If you live with them, I actually have grown to quite like the interior of this car. I think they fit really nicely with the white paintwork and the blue calipers. It does kind of all tie in. The steering wheel, the feel of this steering wheel, it's so thick and firm and beautifully appointed. So this car is fitted with BMW's latest operating system, number 7 MMI. And I've driven a few BMWs of recent. Obviously I went on the M8 launch, and I've driven the M850, the new M5, the new M2. They've all got this, the M340i, they've all got this operating system, and it is brilliant. And for me, that's probably where comparing this car with mine isn't particularly fair, because the new S4 has the upgraded infotainment system from Audi, which is just that little bit better touch screen, whereas mine's only jog wheel. This is touch screen and jog wheel. You've got some proper buttons in here as well. But the information it gives you, it's very easy to use, but this central instrument pinnacle is just so nice. And we've got a virtual cockpit in my car, and I guess the thing where mine really pays out is because you've got Google Earth integration in your sat nav. The virtual cockpit just looks so cool, where it's not quite as cool in this, but it makes up for it. Just the way it's been designed. The head-up display in this car is brilliant. I don't have a head-up display in mine, so it's a close one. I think the infotainment system in this car is better than Audi, although I prefer the Google Earth integration. Let's very quickly jump in the back just to talk about leg room and comfort in the back, and then we will brave the weather and go and talk about how these cars drive and try and compare them that way. Let's jump in the back. Now then, there's not a gigantic amount of leg room behind, but I have got the seat a long way back because I'm a tall, lanky git. But loads of headroom, and it is a beautifully appointed place. The back of these seats look lovely. These seats are very comfortable. So yeah, I could quite happily do a long journey in here. Probably not if I was driving. I'd want the driver maybe just to put the seat an inch forward and I'd have a little bit more space. So let's take this out on the road. I'm going to jump back in that seat and we'll brave the weather, shall we? The very first thing you're going to feel when you jump in this car compared with the S4 is the weight of the steering. It's really a lot more firm. At slower speeds, the steering wheel just feels, maybe it's because it's a chunkier steering wheel, heavier steering, and it just makes this car feel bigger and just somewhat more robust. And I'm sure that's not the case, but it just makes it feel like a bigger, kind of heavier car. When I jump back in my S4, having had this car for a week and been driving around, the S4 just felt lighter and dartier and sharper for me. In terms of driving modes, if you go into the sport mode setting, I've configured an individual mode, and all I've done there is basically put everything to the maximum sport setting apart from the suspension and left that on comfort. That is my kind of default setting whenever I get in a car that kind of, you know, allows you to change stuff. And I found that suspension setting is supple and compliant and deals with all the bumps in the road. it still gives you that kind of firmness you want when you push on a little bit for that handling. It certainly goes, that's for sure. When you really push on, it feels faster than my S4, and the numbers prove it. It is a quicker car to 60, and it's got more horsepower, and it does feel really quick. But the four-wheel drive system is quite different. So this is a very rear-biased four-wheel drive system, and you can really feel that especially when you're accelerating hard out of corners. Sometimes in my S4, when you're really pushing hard, you can kind of feel the front wheels getting the traction and getting the grip. And in this car, it's the other way round. And the engine, now, I haven't actually driven this 3-litre straight 6 B58 engine that often, and everybody raves about it, and certainly it's only when you get to spend a lot of time with it you realise what an absolutely cracking power unit it is. Now, the other engine mode I've used, but only on the motorway or dual carriageway, is the Eco Pro mode. Now, that's where this kind of 48-volt hybrid system comes in. So don't hear the word hybrid and think you can run this car on electric only, or you've got to plug it in overnight. It's none of that. The hybrid system really is all to do with aiding fuel economy. It smooths off the start-stop, and to be honest, you can't really tell it's in the car. There is a display that shows you when the battery's harvesting energy when you're on overrun or braking and stuff. But in Eco Pro, you can again go into the settings and change a whole bunch of things to try and help the car eke out as much fuel economy as possible. And I have to say, I've been running that on the dual carriageway, and at one point I was in the very high 30s MPG. Admittedly, I started it when I was doing 70 miles an hour in cruise control on the motorway, and then I did probably an hour's worth of driving, maybe a bit more than that, and the fuel economy was phenomenal. However, the second you come off the motorway in Eco Pro mode, the car is so dead to the foot and dead to the throttle, it's not a pleasant car to drive in Eco Pro. So for me, I would only as an owner put it in that mode on a cruise, because to be honest, when you've got cruise control on the motorway, it really doesn't make any difference. You can't tell the difference. But when you want to accelerate hard or pull away from a junction, Eco Pro mode is definitely not for me. Now, this car certainly has way more technology than my S4, and in that case it wins hands down. One of the bits of tech on board that I've actually used way more than I thought I was going to is it has an assisted driving feature, which is effectively adaptive cruise control on steroids, and I've driven quite a few cars with it recently. The SQ8 I had a couple of weeks ago had it, and it's basically you stick it in cruise control, and the car is aware of all of its surroundings. On the display you can actually see cars you're coming up behind, cars going past, and it drives the car for you. It's a hands-on feature, of course, but it's for long motorway driving when you've got a lot of miles to munch. If you stick it in assisted driving, it just makes a long journey go far quicker, and it's good enough so that as the car slows down to kind of creeping traffic and traffic jams, it kind of still does everything for you. I don't think it's quite as good as the Audi system, and whether or not it's just because I hadn't set it up, but the Audi system I drove in the SQ8 had speed sign recognition, and that basically meant that if you put it on and you were in a built-up area, or if there was a temporary roadworks or something along those lines, the car spotted that and adjusted the speed accordingly. With this one, it tells you what the speed limit's going to be, and then you actually have to manually kind of set the car to be at that new speed limit, which is, it's okay, but it's better if it does it automatically. But I do really like that feature. But for me, that motorway cruising style of driving in either Eco Pro mode or assisted driving makes this a brilliant mile muncher, and let's face it, that's what lots and lots of buyers are going to want. You know, they're going to want to be able to do the miles. But this car isn't completely about that. It's when you get it on a road like this car is about what's under the bonnet and what ends up being underneath your right foot. The out and out performance of this car is sensational. So I reckon we push on a bit, don't you? So if we're going to push on, just push the gear stick to the left. That engages the sport. Gearbox is still changing on its own. Oh my goodness me. onto those gears, this engine revs. It's just such a good engine. It doesn't, for me, have nearly the same character in terms of noise as my S4. The noise my S4 makes really is very addictive, and this thing doesn't quite have it for me. But in terms of outright grunt, blimey, this car's an absolute masterclass in how to make a car go quick. You can grab a paddle. Once I'm in the sport mode, I'm now on the paddle. This ZF gearbox really is 8-speed ZF. It's brilliant. I've driven it in lots of cars, and I really like it very, very much. It's responsive, and it engages you in the drive. Oh, big flood, look at that. Now, this is where you want that extra traction of the four-wheel drive. The XDrive system gives you that confidence, and I know for some people it kind of goes against everything there is in BMW, a rear-wheel drive, ultimate driving machine. Well, let me tell you people, the XDrive system in a BMW just makes the car way, way more usable. The thing I love about my Quattro S4 is you can use it in any conditions, you can go fast in any conditions, and it's just confidence inspiring, and that's what I love about it. So I think we do maybe need to put this car to the test in terms of a 0 to 60 test, because it's quite spectacular. Now then, I found a nice straight bit of road. I put it in sport box. I've turned the traction control off so I can activate launch control. So 3, 2, 1, go! 60. Wowzers. This thing, it's like a little rocket ship, and that's in very, very wet conditions. Not a spot of, I didn't feel any traction issues at all there. Do you know, these cars come into their own on a horrible day like today, where the grip is low, there's standing water. Oh, that's why I love them. But my question has to be, why on earth is BMW, or has BMW been so reluctant to make fast estate cars? I just honestly don't get it. I know you've had, like, you know, 330 Tourings and those types of things, and I'm no expert in the BMW range, but they've never really had anything that can go toe-to-toe with an RS4 or an RS6 Avant, and I just don't understand it. For me, I think they'd sell loads and loads of them. Now, I know this is an M340, so this isn't really a full-fat M car by any means, but an M version of this with, let's say, 500 horsepower like the new M3 is going to have, that would be amazing, and I just think they'd sell loads of them. And this is so good that you should, because it's a very, very difficult car to fault. If I'm going to start trying to talk about things I'm not that keen on, there aren't that many, to be honest. The steering feels a bit heavy for me. The engine sound could be a little bit better. Mine's far, far nicer than this, and this is in the days of OPF filters and stuff, but it could sound a little bit better. But in terms of comfort and tech and being in this car for a long journey, it's very difficult to fault. In terms of performance, it's very, very difficult to fault. It's so quick, but it's reasonably economic as well, even without sticking it in Eco Pro mode. Early 30s are quite achievable, which is pretty much what I get in my S4. In Eco Pro on a long journey, you'll get even a little bit more than that, and that's impressive. So yeah, my overall conclusion of this car is, damn, it's good. Would I consider getting one of these over an S4? Well, let's just talk very briefly about price. The base car, these base start at around about £50,000. The car we're sat in is about 57, I think, with all the various sort of options and stuff. So you're kind of looking at that high end of the 50s, I think, by the time you put some decent options in it. 56, 57, that kind of money, which is about the same kind of money as a new S4, maybe a little bit more. That's good. That's good money for the car, you know, and it's very tempting. I really, really like it. I have to say a huge thank you to BMW UK for letting me have the car for just over a week, actually, because I've had the car for a week without turning any cameras on, which is something I really like to do. It means I can really get a feel for it, and then when I put the cameras on and I make the film, I can give you my honest opinion. Anyway, with that, I'm going to sign off. I hope you've enjoyed this one, guys. If you have done so, please give me a thumbs up. Comments below are always welcome, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Petrol for plenty more content to come. And I'll see you on the next film, guys, but you take care. Drive safe.